Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and on the eve of the live letter, we actually have a slew of interviews being released between Yoshida and various Japanese media sites on patch 6.3 and a little bit beyond. This is a pretty normal thing. Right around the time of a live letter is normally when like an embargo comes off on an interview, and then a lot of the interviews are kind of done in the same room, so they tend to have a lot of the same overlapping questions. But of course, we have our community members who go out of their way to translate these things. We've had very many of them, but 11 Mile, the one that made this post over on the subreddit, is one we've had to reference quite a lot. We're very grateful for all of the blog.livedoor.jp overviews and archives that they've gone over and translated so that we can get this news prim and proper. So thank you to them. I'll include a link in the description of the YouTube video. So go and give them like upvotes, karma, whatever matters to Reddit. It doesn't matter to me, but it matters to them, and it matters that you give credit to the source. Either way, we've got quite a few topics here. It says several media outlets, just a bunch of stuff on 6.3. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first topic was on Myths of the Realm, the god realm of happiness. Guess this is my god realm, Euphrosyne. We already know the name of the last realm, but I always forget what it is. Now, before we read this, it being the god realm of happiness, I said I wanted the story to kind of pick up a pace. I wanted a conflict, some sort of reason other than just for fun to do the 24-man. Not that I thought that that would be bad, but I definitely wanted to see some sort of discourse being introduced. And it being the god realm of happiness doesn't exactly make me think that's going to be the case. So it looks like we might be in line for just something fun-loving, if that name is to be taken literally. The previous 24-man raid of Glaya was well received, far above what Yoshi P expected. I mean, it was a fun story. It's something that we've wanted, and I'm not going to lie, after an expansion of getting a raid that, you know, some people liked and it expanded upon a different game's lore, I mean, I definitely felt like I was missing an entire raid series worth of world building. And this is a pretty big one, especially given the events of Endwalker. So 12 Eorzean deities are existence that the Eorzeans love and revere so much so they can't help themselves. So the devs are maintaining that tension for this tier. This will also mean they're retaining the festival feel. So yeah, so it is keeping to this whole, like, they are jolly and friendly and they just want to finally interact with humanity and I guess kind of reveal themselves to some degree. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the last tier won't have some sort of increased, I guess, actual tension, but the level of tension of this, you know, they're just having fun kind of situation seems to be what's going to continue. A lot of learning, a lot of world building, but without an actual major conflict. So maybe it'll surprise, maybe it feels this way, but there is something more underneath the hood when it actually comes out. I'm okay with this, but I would definitely like to see a bit more. There are deities who are beautiful and cute, and there will also be deities who are cool and awesome, but relentless. Since each opponent you face has a clear direction in what they're trying to portray for their concept, the players will be able to enjoy a rich amount of variety in battle. I mean, yeah, I get that. I mean, we are essentially just we're fighting the 12. At this point, given if they're going to keep this theme of it being very carefree, then I have to imagine that, as most people would predict, we'll fight all 12 before it's over. I mean, there's 12 bosses, there's the 12. It's, you know, it's kind of fitting. Where we can't even argue the 13 thing with Null and Thal because we did that already. So, yeah, then that's fine. It's just going to be about, you know, fighting the deities and getting to see them in person after all this time. And apparently they were asked specifically about Nafika. The image that we've seen appears to be the realm of Earth, the one with the giant tree. And so, you know, Yoshida doesn't want to say that Nafika is going to be in it. You know, he's trying to do that whole coy thing where he won't say that it's in it. The devs want to fulfill the player's expectations, but not promising something that goes way above and beyond on the matter. If you're charmed by her, you'll be in trouble, so be careful. Sounds a lot like what's her face from Glaya. Everyone's like, yeah, no, it'll be fine. No, she's awesome, and then you just get kicked in the face because you forget to get behind her for a mechanic. So yeah, not much really to say. Just a little fun background about the 24-man, and it's just confirming it is going to stay kind of in that same vein. Now on Ultimate, we're going to find out what the Ultimate is tomorrow during the live letter, presumably. The theme for this Ultimate doesn't have that much of a twist, so if most players predicted it has to be this, it should be fine. That pretty much confirms it's Omega. Omega is like the 80 to 90% predicted one, and the Warring Triad is like that kind of holding on to maybe getting them. We have had comments about Warring Triad Ultimate in the past from the Ultima Weapon Ultima dev. He said that if he did another one, that's the one he'd want to do. But, you know, the pattern has been up to this point, you know, Raid Series MSQ, Raid Series MSQ, and then this is in line to be Raid Series. So it's the most logical prediction. I do think we need to break out into messing around with the other series, the Trial Series in particular. We didn't have a Trial Series for Realm Reborn. Like, it was just, you know, we got the primals, you know, that were from Final Fantasy 11 that were already established in 14. And that's just kind of how it went, with Mog and Mog mixed in and Odin and a couple other trials. But I hope they are under the consideration of an actual, you know, trial theme raid. I mean, we have a lot of great bosses. The Warring Triad, I know we don't have Kefka technically, but, you know, they could always squeeze something in that's Kefka-like. We of course have the weapons. We have the 4 lords. You know, there's plenty of meat on the table. They just got to carve it up. So I'm hoping they don't shy away from that in the future. Yoshi P will provide a demonstration on it in the producer live letter. That's not that abnormal. Usually cues into the door boss, gets beat up, maybe shows 1 or 2 AoEs or something of that capacity, and then cuts the screen away. Oh, can't show them that yet. Like they didn't know how long they were going to be in that setting. The rewards will be the same: titles, weapons, adventure plate, which I always forget that, you know, I haven't really looked at adventure plates as of late because I haven't been PvPing. But yeah, the ultimate adventure plates are really good, so I hope this one is really good as well. Regarding the weapon, Yoshi P has already instructed devs that since we have the next ultimate, you need to consider on the visual effects, design, and the glow. That shows the difference between the two during DSR's development. So between the two, I believe he's referring to the original Omega weapons, or the original whatever weapons. You know, at this point, I'm going to just say Omega because I'm pretty sure that's what it'll be. And then these new ones, kind of like how you have the gears turning on the Alexander weapons. So this one I expect to be uber fancy. And they've been working on that since DSR's development stage as well. It will be once again a reward where players are proud to show it off. Yoshi P himself is pretty fond of the design, so those who got the weapon from the upcoming Ultimate may evoke some form of jealousy. I mean, that always happens. It's just what that jealousy leads to that's sometimes not always the greatest. Currently, they consider DSR to be the hardest, and they're not thinking of overtaking it in difficulty. Yeah, if this was the same or harder than DSR, I know a lot of people who on that statement alone would just not even try. At least not try to do hardcore hours when it first comes out. Between DSR and Abyssos, there is a lot of raid burnout. As someone who's been in the raid scene, I've just seen a lot of people trying to replenish ranks after just straight up burnout from those 2 raids in a row, especially DSR. DSR really injured a lot of people's, I guess, not confidence. They just don't want to do that exact thing again, at least not anytime soon. So it's probably a good thing if they're not thinking of overtaking it in difficulty. They've implied as much before. They can't tell you how long the battle will last in length, but they're not going to make it extremely short, maybe around DSR's length predictions. So they're not saying it'll be DSR's length, which I think a lot of the difficulty is barreled down into that length. I mean, we've seen, you know, the difference between a 16-minute encounter and an 18-minute encounter. And then there's the question of, do they mean the 18 minutes of DSR or the 22 minutes with the door boss? You know, is there going to be a door boss? So there's all sorts of elements in play. I am looking to about a 16.5 to 17-minute encounter. I think that would be the good decision after DSR, having that earlier in the expansion. But if it is Omega, there's also the flip side of not wanting it to be a pushover. Like, do you really want Thornton to be harder than Omega in terms of like theme and execution? No, but I mean, that just might be how it turns out. I think UCOB is really the one that nailed the how we remember it versus how Ultimate plays out kind of situation, where it feels as grand as Bahamut should have felt, whereas it's been kind of a mixed bag with all the rest of them about the balance between those two things. The person who's handling Ultimate this time will be the designer who All right, well, my prediction is 100% coming true because I said this was going to happen. The person who's handling Ultimate this time will be the designer who planned the bosses for Criterion Dungeon Savage, who was also involved in the production. I said we are 100% getting tripwires if it's Omega. They're gonna make us do the tripwire mechanic in an 8-man setting, the one from the last boss of Criterion Savage. I've been saying that, and I am now 100% sure, because if there's anything that Final Fantasy XIV has done over the years with its raids and its mechanics and its consistency throughout an expansion, once they introduce a new element, that gets used until the end of the expansion. We are almost certainly getting tripwires. Now it's just about where they are. We're going to have to do fists with tripwires, Hello World with tripwires. Where are the tripwires going to be? Oh, I already have a few imaginings in my head. And honestly, tripwires, not the worst thing to have, because the thing about the tripwires is there's really only one way to solve them. And that's true of Criterion. Like, there's like only one correct way. So it's just about identifying where you start and where you end, but the execution is exactly the same. So that actually is not even a bad thing. I don't think it's too difficult to mechanic, or it shouldn't be used, but it's just, I've just been calling it. All right. The mentioned designer is also assigned to work on the final boss. I'm assuming they mean, do they mean the final boss of Savage, or do they mean, I think they mean the final form of Ultimate in particular, because it's just that statement, it's collective. I guess it's in quotes. So I guess that yeah, I think they mean the final phase of Ultimate. Designers that worked on past Savage 4th floor boss, as well as experience in creating Ultimate content, will be the designers for the first 2 bosses. Meaning Ultimate. Oh, yeah, they aren't talking about Savage. So they just have different designers on Ultimate this time. I'm okay with that idea. I think that definitely helps take the pressure off of the individual developers, or whoever the lead developer is. But I'm worried about the consistency of the feel, because like having one, I guess, overseeing developer that kind of directs most of the things usually leads to something that feels a bit more cohesive, I feel. So I'm hoping that it's not a case of a lot of different design philosophies making for almost a disjointed feeling encounter. At the end of the day, if it is Omega or whoever it is in the future, you have a certain number of things that you can pull from, and they are thematic to those encounters against that boss, or any other boss that was tangential to them, like having the dolls and Living Liquid, even though they belong to Manipulator. But we'll see how it turns out, because that could be good for just the consistency of development for it in the future. So that could actually be quite the good thing on the flip side. This will be the final Ultimate for 6.x. Anyone who is Copium for 6.5 Ultimate, honestly, if you've been on that Copium for... If you ever had the Copium of 6.5 Ultimate and you weren't just joking, then you needed way more than Copium. You needed just help. The story elements for this Ultimate more toned down. They said they would do that, yeah, before. It's not as prominent. They're making sure the story elements and the direction animation will not be overdone for this Ultimate and beyond. Interesting. I don't think they need to not do it ever again. I just think that DSR's level of involvement with that is something that should be done seldom. Like, it shouldn't be done that frequently, I mean. Because it does give DSR a very unique feel amongst all the other Ultimates. It's also a big reason why it's as difficult as it is, and why it's as long as it is. They want to aim for 2 Ultimate releases for the next expansion and beyond, and while they do think so, if they end up investing too much cost on the direction, the possibility of aiming for 2 may end up... Oh, so it seems like going too deep into the story and spending the extra time on that, they worry about, you know, if anything were to happen, or if they were like kind of getting tight on the deadline, if it would hold them back in any capacity. So it just sounds like that's another reason why DSR is going to be seemingly the only super involved story-wise one. So, okay, that's perfectly fine by me. Stop scrolling up. I need to update my software. Regarding the 3rd deep dungeon, Eureka Orthos, there aren't much story quests for this content. There weren't for the previous ones, but they still actually had a lot of lore and story tucked away in like the... almost like maybe 9 minutes of cutscenes. Like Heaven on High doesn't have a whole lot. Palace of the Dead has a follow-up quest. Honestly, Palace of the Dead has the most story in all of them, but it's a lot more like a closing of a character or an NPC story, and less about Palace itself. And the Palace 100 floor is a Tactics Ogre reference. So there's yeah, I mean, it's just not been a content that usually tells an in-depth story, but the world building is normally quite proficient. The map image may allow the player to feel their story elements in them. Yeah, I suspect. The text is really well written, so Yoshi P thinks they managed to solidify it quite well. Okay, yeah, that's perfectly fine by me. Since the episode for this content is quite interesting, so it'd be nice if players can challenge up to the deepest level. I don't know what that means. I don't think he would have said it's not interesting. All right. Well, I mean, yeah, I'm going to do that. So sure. Thanks, AirShippy. Since they received comments that the difficulty of challenging Heaven on High solo is just right, they want to make sure players are able to have fun. That's good. Heaven on High's solo ability is very challenging still, especially if you're not someone who's used to that style of content. But you don't feel as bad going through it multiple times. Like, yeah, do you want to do the earlier floors when you're soloing it? No, like those obviously are always going to get boring. but they become resource building points. They become just mild attention checks, and they kind of just, you can warm up. If you want to also set up like multiple saves in a single day and then do like late floor attempts, you just have a lot more flexibility than Palace doing, 1 to 200. So yeah, no, I agree with that. There will be plenty of new mechanics and elements the player can utilize. I'll wait to see about that, because Heaven on High had the same kind of statement, and I didn't really feel like they made enough changes, or the new elements that they introduced weren't as they didn't feel different enough, I suppose. It still felt like I was just doing Palace, but maybe an animal with a buff would show up occasionally, or I could just cheese like 3-4 floors in a row by getting some decent Magicite drops. That was really the biggest difference, especially when I went back and did Palace of the Dead. The basic rules don't change. They won't change how this content can be played casually. Okay, so you'll still realistically do, like 10, there'll be like a set 10 floors for leveling, and there'll be a few floors that are part of the story, and then the rest are going to be challenge floors. Okay, yeah, that I expected to stay, pretty much. Players who challenge Deep Dungeon up to this point, they can rest assured that this is a direct linear sequel to the previous content. Not story-wise, just feel-wise. You shouldn't feel like you're not doing Deep Dungeon again. Okay, that's expected. If players are just looking to clear the scenario, this will finish in about 30 floors. So yeah, literally Heaven on High, because I expect 100 floors, basically. It's okay to think of this as basically works on Heaven on High. There you go. The reward for solo clears are titles only, just like before. Basically, the line of thought for rewards on this content remains the same, and plenty of item variations are prepared for cases where one obtain them from clearing the scenario, and those who explore the floors deeper. Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. I didn't expect them to add new rewards to soloing. Would it be cool? Sure. But Deep Dungeon soloing is always either the personal achievement of doing it and then getting the title that not that many people have, or getting... or if you're like Angelus, you just enjoy that kind of randomized experience regardless of the fact that you've already done it before. So that's perfectly in line with my expectation for Deep Dungeon. Paladin adjustments. Oh boy. I mean, this isn't a very big section, so I suppose we'll just have to wait for the live letter. The whole job is basically overhauled. Oh, Zeph! He was very afraid of that. That's the main objective for the adjustment this time, and they are not adjusting this with the objective of working on its rotation. Yeah, so that's fair. Buffs that are hard to use before compared to other tanks have been adjusted. I already know exactly what... I think I know exactly what it's going to be. Yeah, I mean, okay. No, I expect this. I wonder... how they're gonna... I wonder if they'll even have fight or flight anymore, if they're just gonna get rid of it in favor of just doing request cat. I know it's requiescat, but I don't care. There's a few ways they could do this that still kind of keeps the whole paladin swapping between physical magical thing, but it would be in the it would be at the cost of doing one of them less frequently. So like you'd have to make one of them, you have to make them both 2 minutes, but you can't reasonably use them both at the same time, which then has its own big problem. So I don't think they would do that. Yeah. So there's, yeah, I mean, it's just going to be, they have a 60, like, and they have a 2. You know what it is? Fight or flight will probably be all damage, and requiescat will probably be nearly the same, but you'll just have a requiescat window without fight or flight, and then a requiescat window with fight or flight, and fight or flight will be the 2 minutes. So yeah, I just have a feeling that's what it's going to be, but they're gonna go into detail about this in the live letter. So it's just what I'm expecting. We have a large amount of small tricks in this job have been sorted out, which is the reason why Paladins play it right now. It's also the reason why people don't play it. So that might be more what they're focusing on. The details on the concept behind the changes when overhauling the job, including the combo and whatnot, will be relayed. Okay, so just please wait. Refer to the articles on the intention behind the Paladin changes, Japanese only. See the source above. Okay, so yeah, they spoke about the intention of it, but it's just more details, I guess, on what's here. Regarding Manderville weapons, you will need to finish patch 6.35's Manderville quest before working on the next stage of the weapon. I kind of wish they didn't do that. It's not even a big deal. If you don't care about the story, that takes like 7 minutes, most likely. That's just how Manderville quests have worked up to this point, outside of the few outstanding ones that have trials back in A Realm Reborn and Stormblood. But that being said, I feel like they should go permanently different paths after the introduction and not be simultaneously kind of side by side, because I feel like they set them up well to do that. And so I don't want to feel like the Manderville quest is on the side also fueling the Manderville weapon quest, when they've already kind of divided them quite well. So I'm not actually a big fan of that, as much as I am a fan of the both of the quest lines so far. And I actually really like the premise for the Manderville weapon quest line. I thought it was an amazing initial premise, much to my surprise. I thought it was just going to be, fun and silly, and it is, but I really enjoyed why we're making the Manderville weapons as a particular element. The concept for the weapon strengthening this time would be able to exchange for something naturally by saving up the rewards gotten from various contents. That sounds like tomes. No, that could be anything. We've had a lot of steps. I mean, that's pretty much the embodiment of the Zodiac and Anima quest line. Like, everything is like that. You do a bunch of different content. You use what you get from those, whether it be light, whether it be drops from dungeons. Like, that's just how it's always been. So that really doesn't narrow it down at all. But that reads to me like tomes is what it does. Players don't need to worry too much about being stuck to a particular thing. Since the main playstyle for 14 right now is players playing multiple jobs, they're planning to balance it so players can complete the next step of multiple Manderville weapons instead of just one. Yeah, so that means if you're only making one, it won't last as long. That's not that surprising. It's been leaning that way since Stormblood. Eureka weapons, the first one was kind of rough, and then all of them after weren't that bad. And Shadowbringer's weapons, I definitely felt the same. Although Shadowbringer's weapons were, other than the first weapon having some one-time quests, it was pretty much identical lengthwise if you did it within the same patch before any nerfs came in. So yeah, that's in line, and I think that makes sense when you have 19 weapons, 19 jobs, and it's only going to go up. Sooner or later, it's going to be not about just giving things people that they're going to do a single time. So totally expected that. The visual effects and timing of weapon enhancements will follow the flow of past weapons, strengthening contents. It's unclear whether the flow of weapon upgrades and its final item level will be the same. Let's be honest, it probably will be. They didn't say it will be, is all that's saying, but it probably will be. Hildebrand Return series will span throughout all of 6.x. 6.3 is not the end of the series. It'll get worse. You can't say that even in quotes, because what it means is the shenanigans are going to get crazier, not it's going to be a lower quality. But people will take that and just say, well, they said it's going to be even worse. I hate it now. I'm going to hate it even more. Though, to be fair, when it comes to Hildebrand's antics, that is kind of how people who don't like it tend to think. So not entirely wrong, I suppose. The weapon will be badass looking. I don't think anyone is even considering anything otherwise, because the initial weapons look great, which is, of course, different from the silly and comedic nature of the story, so please rest assured. They should have said that before it even came out, because up until the day we got them, people were like, oh, it's going to be a frying pan and a fishing rod or some shit. And yeah, so this is reconfirmation that the first step being badass, which I think the first step was great, is going to be the continued idea. We're not building joke weapons, basically, as a reaffirmation. The strengthened weapons in the future will have visual effects attached. I mean, yeah, we expected. The first step usually doesn't. Regarding the 6.3 trial, happens during the main story. We knew that already. On the EX version, it has a brain training element that's different from Barbaricia. There are also personal mechanics and the other types of mechanics mixed in as well. It'll be a classic battle. Okay, saying that they didn't go for something. With Barbaricia, they said they very specifically wanted her to match the pace of the music of that very frantic Final Fantasy IV boss theme. And so that's why they have like all this phase with the instant cast and the jumping around and AoE here, AoE there. You could still structure it, but it comes off as chaotic. So for this, they're looking for something that's more traditionally Final Fantasy XIV. So I think that was within the realm of expectation. If they had done the same thing for all of them, it wouldn't have been as cool. We've learned they like to do that, and I'm glad they're just deciding not to do that. New Crystalline conflict stage. I'm really interested to see how this stage ends up working out, because I thought it looked really cool in the live letter. We'll show how it's done through live footage, so we'll get a live example of it in the producer live letter. I wonder if Yoshi P is going to get ganked like last time. Sure hope so. Since the development name is House Full of Tricks, it's going to have a lot of gimmicks, more so than the volcanic heart. So we noticed this, and we were trying to figure out if it was all one gimmick or multiple. We noticed there were fake doors. We noticed there was gold around the arena. We noticed there was delivery points for the gold. And of course, we also see What's-His-Face throwing the gold onto the arena. So it looks like it will probably have changing paths at various points, like the doors will flip to how you actually get around. And also you'll be doing the collection to maybe hire Yojimbo to fight on your side or something like that. So it's going to be very gimmicky. In return, the ratio of the gimmick triggered in the stage will not be frequent. Okay, so it's not like the volcanic heart where you can get it 2 or 3 times a fight. You might see it once, maybe twice. Maybe even just once, who knows. So yeah, they're going to make sure that it's not like constantly in your face of a gimmick. All right, that's fine. I think that's a decent balance, but we'll see if they nail it for those short matches. For example, a portion of the stage will suddenly get lifted. Oh, that's right. There were also the ninja flippy things that we saw from the Kugane Castle, which makes sense. We're in Kugane Castle here. Sometimes you even see coins thrown all around. Yeah, so that is what it is. It's gonna have a bunch of stuff like that. Okay. Yeah, I think that stage is gonna be really cool. Probably very frustrating on a competitive level, but in terms of people generally enjoying your game level, it probably is gonna look quite attractive to a lot of people. Others. Okay. The addition of spearfishing and water diving in old areas this time are developed and added by the developers, not instructed by Yoshi P. We always get like one or two things that the developers just decide need to be done, and making the world feel more connected and more fluid, I suppose, seems to be a very frequent thing. The devs just go up to Yoshi P and say, yeah, we're doing this, by the way. I mean, that's how we got flying in A Realm Reborn. It was literally just some dev said, we need to do this. Like, it just we can't not do it. It needs to happen. And now it's the same with spearfishing, diving, all that stuff. They just said, listen, we need to do this. We can't just keep having water that's just water. It needs to be diveable. So I expect they'll probably continue. I wonder if it's the same, because it's the same idea. So it's got to be like similar devs that keep thinking the same thing of like this better interconnectedness of the world. And I love it. It's good to see developers actually want to keep improving their game in aspects like that. Even if they're not gameplay elements, you know, when a new player starts playing, they think, oh, can I dive in the water? The answer will be yes. And that's a good thing, because that's what they can't do it till Stormblood, oddly enough, but they can do it now, you know, theoretically. They can't learn how to swim till way too late, though. Yoshi P has mentioned that you are more than welcome to dive into the seas and take screenshots without the spearfishing. Share those screenshots on social. When you do, the staff members will be motivated to work on the rest of the areas. Yeah, he wants to show them that he wants them to know that they're appreciated. That's all he's saying. Well, it can't be told in detail yet. Yoshi P is hard at work, working with other companies so that players can go, wow, they're going all their way to do that for both in-game and external activities. Okay, so first of all, in-game says collaboration, because what the heck else would they do? Okay, so actually, this is an all-encompassing statement. I can't even narrow it down, because this could be more things like the 3D audio that we got. This could be things like collaborations. And also, I think it was in the previous live letter or during the 14-hour broadcast before that, where somebody had asked him about getting these like 3D printed like characters. And he said he was open to working with companies to do that, to see if they could provide a service where players could order 3D printed versions of their characters. So I wouldn't be surprised if they've been working on more things like that, as opposed to just doing what they've done the entire time. So that would be cool. But I mean, it could be that, it could be anything else. So it's too broad of a statement to say Yoshi P has said he's doing this. They've only expressed interest in things like that in the past, so I'm just trying to tie the dots together here. And details will be made public once the next year comes, so please look forward to it. Cool. And that's all. Thanks for reading. In the upcoming producer live letter, we'll have unofficial interpretations. I'll try to do my best as usual. Thank you, 11 Mile. We have used your translations for quite some videos when it comes to these interviews, and you are always appreciated. Well, with that, that's not our last bit of 6.3 news. I'm going to make one other really short video on something else that I'm sure is going to get the masses riled a little bit. But, you know, at least for now, this video is done. So thank you for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And I will be making videos on the live letter. We'll have a State of the Realm on the live letter. And if there's any topic I want to dive into specifically on the live letter, also do that. We're also making some videos on Blue Protocol. They've been doing dev live streams as well, so be sure to check those videos out. And, well, I've got some very armored videos coming out soon. I'm just waiting on a few things. And so, yeah, please look forward to those as well. Anyway, thanks for watching. I will see all of you in the next video. And until then, take care.